The Ghost in the Shell has always meant different things to different generations. For most viewers, it means Mamoru Oshii's 1995 film, austere, meditative, a little frozen. Science SARU's new series throws that inheritance out and starts over at the source, Masamune Shirow's 1989 manga, a stranger and funnier work than its legacy suggests. This Motoko Kusanagi isn't stoic. She's quick-tempered, sarcastic, occasionally reckless, a full-body cyborg leading Public Security Section 9 against cybercrime, corporate corruption, and a mysterious hacker known only as the Puppet Master. What hasn't changed is the question underneath it all. In a world where minds are networked, hackable, and copyable, what's actually left of the self? Director Moko-chan and animation studio Science SARU render that question in kinetic, hand-drawn, unmistakably retro line work, a deliberate throwback that makes a 37-year-old manga feel like it was drawn yesterday. 5 facets define what makes this version work. Let's start with the boldest one.
Every prior Ghost in the Shell adaptation filtered Shirow's manga through someone else's sensibility. Oshii's chilly philosophy, Kenji Kamiyama's tactical procedural. This is the first one that doesn't. It goes back to the page itself, and what it finds there isn't cold at all. It's goofy. It's horny. It's a Kusanagi who laughs, needles her team, and occasionally does something reckless just because she can. That tonal whiplash isn't a compromise. It's the point. Sometimes the most faithful thing you can do to a beloved work is stop reinterpreting it and just listen to what it originally said.
What the? Whoa, dude, who are you?
You are not the one.
Kyu Hayashida's Dorohedoro understands something that a lot of serious genre fiction forgets. Grimness and comedy aren't opposites, they're neighbors. Its world is a fog-choked slum where sorcerers experiment on the powerless and heads get literally bitten off by reptile-faced protagonists. And somehow, it's also one of the funniest things in the medium. Nobody in Dorohedoro treats their nightmare setting as sacred. Characters crack jokes mid-massacre, bicker about recipes between assassination attempts, fall in love in the middle of body horror carnage. That refusal to let darkness flatten personality is exactly what the Ghost in the Shell recovers by returning to Shirow's manga. Both works share a conviction that horror lands harder, not softer, when it's surrounded by real, lived-in humor, because the jokes prove the characters are still people, not just symbols suffering on cue. Dorohedoro's Kaimon investigating his own missing memory runs on the same engine as Kusanagi interrogating her own cyberbrain, an identity mystery wrapped in violence, carried by characters who never stop being funny about it. If Science SARU's tonal balancing act surprised you, Dorohedoro is the proof that this isn't a fluke approach. It's a whole mode of storytelling waiting for you to catch up on. Section 9 exists because minds in this world aren't private anymore. Every cyberbrain is a networked device, which means every mind is also an attack surface. That's not incidental world building, it's the show's real engine of dread. Hacking someone doesn't mean stealing their password, it means rewriting who they think they are, planting false memories, puppeting their body from somewhere else entirely. Shirow wrote this as speculation in 1989. In 2026, fear reads less like fiction. There's a series that pushed this exact horror even further, into total abstraction. Serial Experiments Lain takes the premise Ghost in the Shell treats as a threat, a mind vulnerable to its own network, and makes it the entire show. Lain Iwakura is a withdrawn teenager who discovers the Wired, a global information network that starts bleeding into physical reality, erasing the boundary between the girl typing at her computer and some other version of herself that may or may not exist purely as data. Where the Ghost in the Shell frames networked consciousness as something to be defended, Lain frames it as something already lost. Identity as a signal, endlessly copyable, endlessly uncertain. The two shows are closer than their surface aesthetics suggest. One bright and kinetic, one hushed and dissonant, both circling the same unbearable question about whether a self that can be edited was ever really solid to begin with. Lain never offers Section 9's tactical comfort of a team fighting back against the invasion. It just sits inside the dread and asks you to sit there too. If Kusanagi's cyberbrain vulnerability unsettled you, Lain is what happens when nobody's left to defend the firewall. Every version of this story eventually circles the same antagonist, an intelligence nobody can see, pulling strings from somewhere inside the network itself. The Puppet Master isn't a person Section 9 can simply arrest. It's a presence that moves through other people's minds, wearing them like masks, leaving Kusanagi's team chasing something that might not even want to be caught. That kind of unseen, godlike manipulator has haunted Japanese animation before. Nowhere more hypnotically than in one director's meditation on dreams invading reality. Satoshi Kon's Paprika imagines a device that lets therapists enter patients' dreams until the device is stolen and dreams start invading the waking world uninvited. What follows is a slow-building collapse between imagination and reality, engineered by an unseen force manipulating events from behind a mask, much like the Puppet Master maneuvering Section 9 from inside their own network. Both stories build dread not through a visible villain, but through the growing suspicion that something is already inside the system you thought you controlled. Where the Ghost in the Shell externalizes this fear as a hacker to be hunted, Paprika internalizes it completely, letting the line between hunter and hallucination dissolve until neither the characters nor the audience can say who's still driving. Kon's film shares Shirow's fascination with consciousness as something porous and unstable, but pushes it further into pure sensory disorientation. Parade floats made of refrigerators and dolls, a detective who can't tell his own memories from someone else's dream. If the Puppet Master's elusiveness got under your skin, Paprika is what happens when that same idea is allowed to run completely unchecked. Look at this show for more than a few seconds, and you'll notice something deliberate. The line work is rough. The compositing keeps its noise instead of smoothing it out. Science SARU chose to make a manga from 1989 look like it was drawn in 1989. Kinetic, hand-inked, alive with imperfection, rejecting the sleek digital precision that's defined this franchise since Production IG. That's a specific aesthetic lineage, and one other studio has been mining it just as aggressively, with just as much attitude. Studio Trigger's Cyberpunk Edgerunners takes a genre usually rendered cold and mechanical, corporate dystopia, chrome augmentation, mercenary violence, and animates it with an almost reckless physical energy. Character designs stretch, exaggerate, and snap with expressive force. Action sequences prioritize kinetic feeling over photorealistic precision. It's the same instinct driving Science SARU's Ghost in the Shell. Cyberpunk doesn't have to look sterile to feel serious. Grit and expressiveness aren't at odds. They can sharpen each other. Both productions treat their retro-adjacent visual choices as a form of argument, not just a look. Edgerunners leans into 80s and 90s anime energy filtered through modern production value. Science SARU leans into the actual line work of Shirow's original pages, noise and all. Where earlier Ghost in the Shell adaptations pursued architectural stillness, clean lines, meditative pacing, both of these works choose motion, mess, and a pulse you can feel. If the visual rebellion here caught your eye, Edgerunners is the loudest recent proof that cyberpunk animation didn't have to stay so composed. Section 9's cases keep circling back to the same institutional rot. Bodies bought and sold, experiments run on people with no leverage to refuse, corporations treating human augmentation as just another product line. The Puppet Master isn't the only villain here. The system that made bodies commodifiable in the first place is just as culpable. That corporate ownership of flesh and mind has a strong literary ancestor, one that imagines a future where biology itself has become intellectual property.
Paolo Bacigalupi's The Wind-Up Girl is set in a future where corporations control genetically engineered crops, bioterror plagues, and even people. The titular Wind-Up, an artificially created being manufactured to be obedient, owned outright by the company that made her. It's biopunk rather than cyberbrains, engineered flesh instead of augmented cyberbrains, but the underlying nightmare is identical to what Section 9 keeps investigating, a world where corporations have decided which bodies count as property and which count as people, and drawn that line wherever it's most profitable.
Where The Ghost in the Shell frames this corporate overreach through espionage and hacking, Bacigalupi frames it through ecology and economics, but both ask the same question about consent in a world engineered by people who never asked for yours. The Wind-Up Girl's struggle for autonomy against her manufactured obedience echoes Kusanagi's own struggle to locate a ghost underneath a body that was, in a sense, also built for someone else's purposes. If Section 9's corporate villains felt uncomfortably plausible, The Wind-Up Girl imagines just how far that logic can be pushed.
5 facets, one question that refuses to resolve. What's left of a person once the mind becomes networked, editable, ownable? Science SARU didn't need to reinvent Ghost in the Shell to make it feel new again. They just had to trust the manga was already asking the right question. Here's what to watch next.